Hello summoners and welcome back to another ProGuides video. I'm Saskia and today we'll be talking about our predictions for the 15 most broken champions on patch 11.16. One of the most important things in a constantly evolving game like League is to be able to adapt with the meta. And that's why we're here for you. If you know what's going to be OP before this patch hits, you'll be ready to hit the ground running without having to test to see if that one buff or nerf really made that much of a difference. And if you don't know how to play any of these OP picks, or you're just a bit rusty, this will give you a few days to brush up on them in normals or on a smurf. Before we get started, I just want to say this list is not in any particular order. It's just a list of champs we think are going to be some of the strongest, most influential picks on the patch. We'll start things off with Camille. If you can't tell from this very first entry, this patch was a bit of a miss from Riot, at least in my eyes. They've left a lot of top picks untouched and the nerfs we do see aren't exactly noticeable. Camille falls into the former category. No amount of buffs and nerfs to other champs are going to change the meta enough to push Camille out of the top spot. I probably sound like a broken record at this point, but she's simply too good at everything. She has trading power and sustain to win, or at least go even in just about every lane. And out of lane, she's a total monster. The combination of her true damage on Q and Divine Sunder being so OP means that not even a tanky frontline can hold her down in teamfights. And if she's allowed to split push, good luck being able to bring her down with anything less than 3 champs once she has 3 or more items. One of the few champs that could actually duel her, Fiora, got nerfed this patch, so she's technically getting an indirect buff. Whether you're trying to learn to abuse the broken champs on this list, or how to deal with them when you end up on the wrong side of the matchup, if you really want to speed up the process, you should check out ProGuides.com. We have courses from all your favorite streamers and pros like CoreJJ, Aframu, and Xmithy to help you really understand how to play your role. And if you want a more personalized one-on-one experience, our top tier coaches are available 24/7 to help you anytime you want it. Whichever option you choose, stop spinning your wheels on your own and get on the fast track to higher elo today. Now let's get back on topic, shall we? Our second broken champ for this patch is Shaco. Usually when you see a champ get a change all the way down into the bug fix and quality of life section in the patch notes, that's exactly what you expect. Something that feels nice for the player, but doesn't have too much of an impact on the game itself. But making it so you can see Shaco's Q in Fog of War hit him a lot harder than expected. In fact, it's one of the only instances of Riot actually nerfing an OP champ in a meaningful way in what feels like months. But don't worry, Shaco is way too fun to play against, so they're reverting that. The meta hasn't exactly shifted in the last 2 patches, so this alone would be enough to put him back to being pretty strong. But on top of that revert, they're fixing numerous bugs for the champ. While I'm not 100% on which bug fixes they're going through with, I imagine most of them are for his clone. While this may seem minor, unless you've actually played him, you have no idea how big of a change this is. Being able to control your clone properly is important to outplaying people in teamfights. Basically, all this means good Shacos will be even better now, looking at you, Chase Shaco. Riven is back to our OP list, partially because of Fiora. One of her few counters is being nerfed, and partially because she's just bonkers OP. With some champs, if you play them well, they are really good. And if you play them even just mediocre, they're bad and even borderline useless. And Riven is one of those most extreme examples of this. When you see an average player on Riven, they basically contribute nothing to the game. They make her combo look clunky, rarely weave in autos, and the result is them getting smashed in lane in just about every matchup. Then out of the lane phase, they jump into fights and they just get blown up. That's if they're not rage splitting and all chatting about jungle diff. But when you see a good Riven, man, do you hope it's on your team. Good Rivens basically win every lane, no matter what. They're able to animation cancel to win trades and know exactly when to back out to avoid taking damage when their opponent tries to return any damage of their own. Even against what are supposed to be counters like Garen and Renekton, really good Rivens just always scrape by the lane. Then in teamfights, they are total monsters. I've seen Rivens flash into the backline and kill the ADC and support in one lightning fast combo, all before her stun wears off. Bear in mind her stun lasts 3/4 of a second, that's how fast she can delete squishy champions. But at the same time, she basically feels impossible to bring down. She's hopping here, jumping there, and she has a shield. Then your team is dead. Yeah, there's a reason why I ban her out when I play top lane. Maokai is getting buffed on this patch, and it's another puzzling case of Riot buffing a champ that has already been borderline OP. On patch 11.15, Maokai has been just barely under 52% win rate as a top laner in Plat plus Elo. These buffs specifically buff top while nerfing support by increasing his passive healing, but chipping just a bit of damage off of the saplings. Maokai as is great with dealing with top lane bruisers. He can build Bramble, Bammies, and Steel Caps and be able to scrap with them easily. This is because his Q and W makes him a pretty good brawler. His root in particular makes him one of the only tanks with outplay potential built into his kit. Being able to use it to dodge certain abilities like Darius Q or Camille E. W and Q also give him a point and click way to force trades once he has a lead, so you can actually snowball said lead and bully your opponent. This buff, an increase to the healing on his passive, just makes his trading even stronger in lane, and it'll make him one of the hardest top laners in the game to beat, while he himself is already incredibly easy to pilot. So unlike Camille and Riven before on the list, literally anyone can pick him up and carry. Just like Maokai, Nunu is another champ that is stupid easy to play, and is already sitting just under a 52% win rate in Plat Plus. Seriously, what's going on, Riot? The buffs aren't even OP, but a buff is a buff. And if he's already doing so well, aren't there tons of other champs they could have put here? Anyways, a movement speed buff means his ganks will be just a bit better, finding it easier to reach and stick to targets. The AP buff is really interesting. While you may be thinking that Nunu is a tank, so it shouldn't matter much. Dark Steel is already a fairly popular item on Nunu. Most people will look to upgrade it if the game is going well. Partially for the AP, but more important, for the movement speed you get when you have 10 or more stacks. E's AP ratio being almost double gives even more incentive to upgrade it when the game is going well. And also makes Demonic Embrace a pretty attractive item if you want some more carry potential without going full glass cannon. Our next pick, I regret to inform you, is Talon. Assassins in general can be pretty annoying to play against, but out of all of them, he's probably my most hated one. And now, he's arguably the best in class, vying for the spot against Katarina. He's just the definition of a cheesy, solo queue pick. His early game and all-in damage is ridiculous. The point that he can basically 100-0 anyone at level 2 if they aren't familiar with him, and move too far up. But he's not just limited to that. Even if you know how to respect him in lane, there's nothing you can do about his disgusting roams. He can easily shove waves with his W spam, and then parkour his way to his side lane. Post 6, this is basically guaranteed kills. While most assassins generally fall off, Talon's ability to leap over walls also makes it pretty hard to pin him down late game. So he's basically always able to find his mark in fights. Even if he doesn't blow up his target, he causes a ton of disruption as the team scrambles to peel and find him in his stealth. Then he zips away, hops a wall, and waits to come back when you forget about him. Our other mid assassins that make the list is no surprise, Katarina. While all the rest of the meta mid laners have been revolving door of assassins, she's the one pick that feels like she's been a staple. Top tier pick for the majority of the season. It just doesn't feel like there's a reliable way to shut her down. Looking at her kit, you don't really expect her to be very good early game, but that's wrong. And that's also why so many players seem to die to her all-ins around level 2 or even 3. Even experienced mid laners just end up being caught off guard by how much damage her daggers do. And once she has a lead, the game is basically over. She rolls over the fights, you cry, she wins. Remember how we talked about Maokai and Nunu being already good champs that are seeing buffs? Well, at least they aren't tanks. And tanks, though annoying to deal with, aren't as frustrating as hyper-scaling, one-shot burst combo but also super tanky mages. By that, I of course mean Vladimir. Vladimir is one of the only mages that can really do well in the current meta. Though he can't get priority, he can safely lane against the assassins that dominate the game. Then out of lane phase, he can completely smash them, able to one-shot them completely as he dodges any combo that gets thrown at him with his puddle. And that's just talking about 1v1s. In teamfights, Vlad is a monster. If he has flash up, there's a pretty good chance that he's going to erase 2 or 3 backline members if the game is starting to go late. Okay, I know I've already said I hated playing against other champs on this list, but Vlad is maybe my #1 least favorite champ to play against ever, of all time. If the game reaches a certain point, it just feels unwinnable. He does insane damage, can't be bursted down, and he heals to full once his ult pops. And that brings us to the question of the day. What champ do you hate playing against the most? It doesn't have to be the most OP champ, but just one you personally can't stand. Let us know your answers down in the comments below. Now let's get back on topic. Despite being on the nerf list, don't be fooled. We've been trying to sell Ziggs as a bot lane carry way before the buffs he got this season. When he did get those buffs, we talked about how ridiculously strong he'd be. And we were right on the money. The nerfs on this patch won't do anything to change that. Yeah, he may do just a bit less with his E, but trust me, he's gonna be a super dominant laner who can neutralize even the hardest lanes. Then out of lane, he provides infinite wave clear, poke, zone control around objectives, and he shreds towers faster than any ADC. We'll let you know when he's not OP. Speaking of OP bot lane champs, Lulu will continue to be a god tier support. We've been saying for months that she needs to be nerfed. No, gutted. And finally, Riot has answered with a really solid tap on the wrist. If you can find a point where one more second on her W really makes a difference in a fight, let me know. 10 seconds on the ult is just as irrelevant. You could argue it's an extra bit of a window where you can engage on her, or her carry in lane. But that's not even close to being enough to know her down from the number 1 spot. Khazix has been a bit of a sneaky champ in this meta. The champ himself hasn't been directly changed since 11.1. The only thing that has affected him are item changes and the shifts in the meta. Yet, that's been enough for him to rise up all the way to the number 1 spot in the jungle. While he is an assassin, he's not just limited to blowing up squishy champs. With his low cooldown Q and ability to stealth, Khazix is able to output pretty consistent damage over time as well, and can easily deal with bruises that normally dumpster assassin champions. He can even flex his build to items like Eclipse and Cleaver to deal with comps that have multiple bruisers. With him being so strong is mostly a product of the current meta being all high damage champions, with very few tanks being popular at the moment. Unless Khazix gets a huge nerf or the meta shifts, expect to see him back here for quite a while. The first actual marksman on this list is Sivir. This buff may not seem like anything crazy, but you have to remember, Sivir's W give her 3 empowered auto attacks. So really, it's like she's getting an extra 60% of her AD in one of her attacks. And those attacks can crit. All in all, this may be a pretty fat boost to her late game DPS, which on top of the utility from her ult, makes her the best teamfighting marksman overall on this patch. If that's not enough to sell Sivir to you, there's also her early game. Most hyper carries are either low damage or at least susceptible to being bullied in lane. But with Sivir, her spell shield helps cover engage attempts, while her fast pushing means you can keep things pretty low interaction if you want. And against lower threat opponents, you can even be a bully, shoving them into tower and forcing them to take poke from your Q as they try to farm. On a side note, I have a question for our Sivir players. Do you prefer the crit build or lethality? I think both are good, so I'm interested to see what you guys have to say. Let me know down in the comments below. Our second ADC for this patch is Tristana. She's been the most consistent marksman for all of this season. She's just too well-rounded of a pick, and she's not a jack of all trades. She's sort of a master of everything. In lane, she can be a huge bully, with her all-in potential being higher than just about any other champ in the class, thanks to her resetting jumps and huge burst damage if you can get off a fully stacked explosive charge. But she doesn't have to be all-in, all the time. Tristana's jump is one of the best escapes in League. Not only does it have a pretty long range, but due to its cast time, you can buffer most CCs with it. Out of lane, her high range, jumps, and self-peel from ult make her the most self-sufficient carry to play. So if you're a marksman main that's tired of not getting help from your team in fights, give this OP champion a try. Rounding out our ADCs, we have Vayne. The question, who is the best late game carry, is an always asked one. If we're talking raw damage output in a 5v5, Jinx, Kog'Maw, and Twitch are all probably contenders. But then there's Aphelios, who situationally can hit massive game-ending ults that solo win the game. But all those champs require a bit of help from their team in a 1v1. They're all just squishy little nuggets that a bruiser or assassin can run over. But with Vayne, that's not as much of an issue. She's one of, if not the only ADC in the game that can consistently duel with bruisers like Camille and Riven, even if they're fed, without much problem if you're good at her. She's also great at dealing with tanks. One complaint from a lot of ADCs is that they can't deal with 400 armor meatballs running at them, and base damaging them to death. But with Vayne, their stats don't matter. You just need Gunsus and a strong right click, and those targets will melt. The ability to duel anyone that runs at you makes Vayne the ideal pick for you if you're a bit edgy and like to totally take over the game yourself. Just don't rage split too hard. Finishing off our list, we have Bard. Bard's unique kit is really adaptable and makes him good in just about every meta. He can peel, he can pick, and he can roam. His ult can even completely deny Rift Herald or negate Karthus ult. He does it all. In the current meta, the best supports are generally pretty passive. Lulu, Janna, Senna, and Zillion are all really strong, but can't do much to punish the other laners. And with Bard, that means you can pretty much perma-roam when you're against them. While you're tilting the enemy mid laner and jungler, those supports will just be sitting there in lane. It's not like they can dive your ADC under tower. With diving out of the question, they can either follow your roams or take plates. The type of people to play those champs are not really the type of people to roam too much. So you can bet they're gonna shove waves to tower, but you're Bard. Call your jungler in, open a portal, and you get free kills. And that about wraps things up for our predictions for the 15 most broken champs on this patch 11.16. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to sub so you never miss out on any of our content like this. Remember to let us know which champ you hate playing against the most down in the comments below. And one last thing, don't forget to check out our Discord in the description box below, where you can discuss League further or just hang out and be part of the community. I can't wait to see you guys back in the next video, but until then, good luck on the Rift, stay safe, and wash those hands. Goodbye.